Hello, and welcome to Boring Science for Sleep, where bedtime stories meet science, told softly and slowly. Have you ever wondered what trees are really doing when no one is watching? Not just standing tall and quiet, but whispering, pulsing, sensing the world around them deep underground and high into the sky. Tonight, we'll step gently into their secret world, a place of slow conversations and ancient memory. Where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it where you are? I always love seeing how these quiet stories connect us across time zones and moonlight. So take a breath, settle in, and let the forest find you. They stand there, don't they? So silent, so still, as if nothing ever happens inside them. As if their lives are measured only in inches and centuries, never moments. But what if I told you a tree is never truly still? Even as you lie here now, eyes resting, breath soft and slow, a forest is stirring, not in the way we expect life to move, but in the way only ancient things do. A leaf gently adjusts its angle to catch the moonlight. Deep inside the bark, sap slowly spirals upward, carrying water drawn from distant roots. And beneath the forest floor, something more is listening. Tonight, we're going to wander softly into the world of trees. Not the way a hiker passes by, not the way a sawyer marks a trunk, but the way a falling leaf finds rest, quietly, curiously, with no rush to understand. You don't have to think too hard. There's nothing to memorize. No test at the end. This isn't a lesson. It's an invitation. So, if your eyes want to close, let them. If your breath wants to slow, let it. And if your mind wants to wander, let it drift with us. Because this is a story of giants that speak no words. Of beings older than our cities, standing in silence, but carrying wisdom in every ring beneath their skin. From the smallest sapling reaching through the shade, to the redwood that's seen stars change position in the sky. We begin not with a bang or a flash, but with the quiet heartbeat of chlorophyll and time. You see, trees don't chase. They wait. They adapt. They endure. They are listeners, observers, and, in their own slow language, responders. That may be what makes them feel so calming to us. So grounding. So familiar. Even though we share no shape, even though we cannot hear their voices, there's something ancient in their stillness. Something we recognize in ourselves. So as the night deepens around you, imagine lying at the edge of a forest. No noise, except a soft breeze threading through the leaves. The scent of bark and moss. The feeling of being very small and very safe. You're not alone in the world tonight. You're surrounded by quiet watchers, each one standing guard not out of duty, but simply because it is their nature to remain. And as you drift, we'll begin to peel back their stillness, to reveal the motion hidden in their calm. When you look at a tree, you see a trunk, branches, leaves reaching gently toward the sky. Maybe a few birds hopping through the canopy, a squirrel darting across the limbs. It all feels above, but more than half of the tree is hidden. Beneath the soil, below your feet, where your eyes cannot follow, there is a mirror world, a sprawling, ancient network of roots. Not just anchors, not just straws sucking up water, but seekers, explorers, messengers. And as you rest now, perhaps curled beneath a blanket, perhaps drifting gently at the edge of sleep, the forest's quiet hands are still moving underground. Let's go there for a while. Let's imagine the world beneath a forest floor. It's cooler here, darker. Soft earth crumbles in layers, a patchwork of ancient decay and fresh beginnings. Every footstep above echoes like a whisper through the soil. But what we find here is not silence. Not really. The roots are listening, stretching, searching, not randomly, but with purpose, at the tip of every fine root. Not the big, thick ones that look like buried branches, but the tiny hairs thinner than a thread. There is activity. Each one senses moisture, temperature, pressure, and even chemical cues left behind by other plants. Like fingers testing the wind, these root tips reach forward. They twist slightly when they encounter resistance. They pause at patches of dry dirt. They pulse ever so gently when they find a vein of water. A tree may grow slowly, but its roots are constantly at work, charting a map of the world below. And when a root finds what it's looking for, not just water, but minerals, nutrients, and even neighbors, it remembers. In a way, you see, roots don't just grow, they decide. And some of those decisions are stored, not in the way our brain stores memories, but in growth patterns, in chemical changes, in signals passed along their own silent circuitry. The root network becomes a kind of memory, a map, a living reflection of the choices the tree has made and the world it has grown through. But a single tree's roots are only the beginning, because in a forest, no tree grows alone. Beneath the soil, the roots of one tree often intertwine with the roots of its neighbors. Sometimes they compete, sometimes they avoid one another, and sometimes they connect. Not just physically, but chemically, biologically, mutually. This is where things start to feel different. Not just botanical, but almost communal. Many trees in a forest, especially older ones, form symbiotic relationships with fungi. Tiny threads of fungi, called hyphae, weave themselves into the roots. They stretch out far beyond what the roots could reach on their own. And in exchange for sugars from the tree, the fungi offer something precious. Access. Access to distant water. Access to nutrients locked in the soil. Access to other trees. Because these fungal threads don't stop at one tree. They branch and bridge. They connect root to root, tree to tree, sapling to giant. This is what scientists sometimes call the wood wide web. And while the name might sound playful, the reality is profound. When one tree is attacked by insects, it can send out a warning through this network. Nearby trees, connected through the fungi, receive the signal and begin producing chemical defenses before they're attacked. When a tree has more sugar than it needs, it can pass some through the fungi to another tree, perhaps a younger one in shade, perhaps an older one in need. And when a tree is dying, sometimes it gives its remaining nutrients to those around it. Not wasted, not lost, but passed on. All this giving, sharing, warning, remembering, is happening right now, under your feet, beneath a layer of leaves and soil, slowly, quietly, but unmistakably. And though it sounds poetic, this is not fantasy. It is science, documented, measured, observed in hundreds of forests across the world, and yet still mysterious. Because the more we learn about these root networks, the more we realize how little we truly understand. How does one tree recognize another as kin? Why do some trees share more than others? Can a forest make collective decisions? We don't know. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But as you listen now, you can imagine it. You can picture a forest not just as a collection of trunks, but as a networked brain, its neurons made of roots and fungi, its thoughts carried in pulses of sugar and signal. A slow mind, a patient one, but perhaps a wise one. Even the largest trees, those that tower above all else, owe their life to what lies beneath. The strength to stand through storms, to draw water in drought, to hold steady when snow bends every branch. All of it begins below. And so perhaps tonight, as you lie still, you can think of roots as more than something to step over, more than a hidden mass underground. You can think of them as the true body of the forest, a body that grows downward and outward, that remembers, that reaches, that feels in its own way. And as you drift deeper into quiet, know that somewhere out there, beneath the oldest trees, a root has just touched something new. A signal has just begun its journey. A pulse of water has just risen toward leaves you cannot see. The forest breathes above, but below, it listens. And we have only just begun to hear. Down here, where the sunlight never reaches, a forest continues its quiet conversations. Not in words, not in sound, but in something far more ancient, more patient, more deeply woven. If you could shrink yourself down, small enough to rest upon a single grain of soil, you'd find the ground alive with threads. Not roots, this time, but filaments, thinner than hair, transparent, almost invisible, and yet everywhere. These threads are fungi, and they form what may be one of the most remarkable systems on Earth. You might have seen a mushroom in the woods before. Round cap, little stalk, quietly standing at the base of a tree after the rain. But the mushroom is only the fruit, the tip of the iceberg, a brief, visible moment in a life lived mostly underground. What lies beneath is something far more extraordinary. It's called mycelium, a dense network of fungal threads, called hyphae, stretching through the soil in astonishing numbers. 1 teaspoon of forest soil, just a single teaspoon, can contain up to 10 kilometers of these threads. Imagine that. 10 kilometers of delicate filaments, packed into a pinch of earth. The mycelium doesn't just sit there. It explores. It digests. And most astonishingly, it connects. Long ago, trees and fungi made a quiet deal. The trees would feed the fungi with sugars, sweet, carbon-rich energy created through photosynthesis. And in return, the fungi would deliver nutrients, phosphorus, nitrogen, and water drawn from the soil. It's a partnership, a mutual gift. But over time, it became something even more profound. Because the fungi didn't stop with one tree. Their threads reached further, touched another tree's roots, and another, and another. What formed was a network, a living fungal internet beneath the forest floor. Scientists call it the mycorrhizal network, but many know it by a different name, the Wood Wide Web. It's not just poetic, it's surprisingly literal. Through this underground mesh, trees can send signals, chemical messages passed from root to root, tree to tree, through the quiet corridors of the fungus. Imagine that, a forest where the trees talk. If one is attacked by insects, it can send a warning, a chemical SOS. Trees nearby, connected through the mycelium, respond by boosting their own defenses before the insects even reach them. If one tree lacks nutrients, say, a young sapling in deep shade, its neighbors can share sugars, minerals, moisture, not randomly, but intentionally, directed. Older trees, often called mother trees, are especially generous. They support their offspring, sending extra carbon to their own seedlings through the fungal web. It's not just survival, it's care, kindness in its most ancient form. And what about when a tree is dying? In some cases, it gives back. As it fades, it pours its remaining sugars into the network, distributing its final energy to those still standing. Even in decay, a final whisper of connection. You might wonder, how do scientists know this? It sounds almost like a fairy tale. But this is real, measured in forests across continents. carbon isotope tracing, radioactive phosphorus tagging, decades of data confirming what the forest has always known. And yet, even science can't explain it all. Why do trees choose to help some neighbors and not others? How do they recognize kin? Is there memory in the mycelium? We don't know. Not fully. But the questions invite wonder. Because the more we uncover, the more the forest reveals itself, not as a collection of individuals, but as a single, living system, a superorganism, a community. And the mycelium, this ghostly fungal network, is its nervous system, its telephone wires, its bloodstream, its whispering rootwork. It is the quiet connective tissue of the forest, and it's been here longer than us, much longer. Fungi were among the first complex life forms on land. They broke down rock, made soil, paved the way for plants to follow. Without fungi, there would be no forest, no field, no food, and yet we rarely notice them. They are hidden, not because they are shy, but because they do not need to be seen. They work in the in-between, the dark, the soft and secret spaces beneath our feet. As you rest now, your breath slowing, imagine what it might feel like to be part of that web. To be connected, not through sight or sound, but through soft pulses of shared chemistry. To send a warning and be heard. To need and be given. To fall silent and still be held. What does that do to your sense of the forest? No longer a quiet stand of trees, but a breathing, pulsing, whispering body. One organism, hundreds of trunks, thousands of minds, millions of threads. Each moment, a signal passes through the dark, a memory of drought, a hint of shade, a message from a neighbor. I am here. You are not alone. We are one. And this network, it isn't limited to trees. It touches grasses, shrubs, ferns, even the smallest herbs at the forest floor can link into this living web. You see, the wood wide web doesn't discriminate. It includes. It expands. It adapts. In this way, it is more than a metaphor. It is a lesson. That slowness is not weakness. That silence does not mean emptiness. That connection can take forms we were never taught to look for. So tonight, as your thoughts drift like spores on the wind, remember what lies beneath you, in the dark, in the soft, in the waiting earth. A world where the oldest things don't shout. They don't rush. They don't compete the way we think they do. They share. They whisper. They remain. And in that gentle, fungal hush, there is wisdom, a quiet intelligence, older than roots, older than rain, older than the first leaf that ever fell. The trees are not alone. They never were, and neither are you. A tree never moves, but inside, it flows. Beneath the stillness of bark, beneath the patient posture of branches raised skyward, beneath the silence we assume is emptiness, a journey is always happening. Not rushed, not loud, but constant. Let's drift into that motion now. Let's follow the water. Imagine a drop of rain falling softly into forest soil. It lands beside a root, or perhaps near the hyphae of a friendly fungus. It seeps through loose earth, drawn gently by gravity, until it reaches a root hair thinner than a strand of your hair. The root notices. It opens a tiny channel, and the water enters. That's where the journey begins. From this humble place, dark, damp, buried, the water will climb, up through the roots, into the trunk, toward the crown of leaves high above. In some trees, 100 feet. In others, 300. Or more, and yet no heart beats to push it. No muscles contract. No pump churns the way your chest rises and falls. So how does the water move? That's the quiet brilliance of trees. They rely on something so gentle, so elegant, that we barely notice it at all. Capillary action, cohesion, evaporation. 3 soft forces, 3 invisible helpers. Let's begin with the roots. They absorb the water, yes, but they don't push it. Instead, they pass it upward. Through the xylem, tiny hollow tubes that run the length of the tree, like delicate drinking straws stacked in bundles. These xylem tubes are made of cells, and when those cells die, they leave behind perfect channels, strong and empty, ideal for one purpose, letting water climb. But water doesn't climb easily. It's heavy. It resists motion. It clings to itself. And that is the secret. Water loves company. Each water molecule holds the next one's hand. They form a long, unbroken chain from root to leaf. When one molecule evaporates from a leaf into the air, just one, it tugs on the molecule behind it. That one tugs the next, and the next, and the next. The result? A long, silent pull, from sky to soil. This is called transpiration, and it's one of the most powerful forces in a forest. A single tree can lift hundreds of liters of water every day, not by pumping, not by muscle, but by letting go, one drop at a time, from the tips of its leaves. It's not just movement, it's nourishment, because that water carries dissolved minerals. It cools the tree on hot days. It delivers calcium, potassium, nitrogen. It is the bloodstream of the forest. And as you listen now, you can picture it. A vast river, invisible and vertical, flowing inside the trunk, rising without noise, bending around knots, pooling briefly in woody chambers, then continuing upward toward the light. You've never heard it, but it's always been happening. Even now, somewhere in a sleeping forest, the xylem is sighing upward. But water is only half the story. There is another fluid within the tree, thicker, sweeter, slower. This is sap. Where water travels up, sap often travels down or sideways, or wherever the tree decides it's needed most. Sap flows through a different system, the phloem. These are living tubes filled with a sugary liquid made by photosynthesis in the leaves. The leaves catch sunlight, turn it into glucose, and then send that energy, that sweet, golden food, to the rest of the tree, to the roots, to the growing tips, to wounds that need healing, to fruits and flowers, to neighbors even. It's not a one-way highway. It's a living, adaptive delivery system. Imagine a mother tree sensing her saplings in deep shade. She shuttles extra sugar through the phloem to their roots, not because she's told to, not because she thinks, but because it's what trees do. Support, balance, sustain. The sap responds to need. It's part of what keeps the tree whole, a sense of self without a mind. And so, within a single tree, there are 2 rivers. The xylem flows up, lifting water from the soil. The phloem flows down and around, distributing food and memory, because sap can also carry signals, hormones, messages, a warning of frost, a cue to drop leaves, a sign of injury, a whisper of spring. The tree listens to itself. It regulates growth, redirects resources, heals, changes. And all of this, the rivers, the responses, the rising and falling, happens without a sound. No heartbeat, no hum, no flickering screen. Just flow, just quiet circulation, like breath held in slow motion. You might never see it, but you can feel it now. Imagine your body mirrored in wood, your veins replaced by vessels of sap. your pulse traded for gentle capillary motion. No rush, no panic, only purpose. As you lie still tonight, you may even feel a kinship. You breathe in air, they drink in light. You carry blood, they carry sap. You have thoughts, they remember in rings. But inside, both of you flow. And that is what makes trees so deeply calming. They remind us of what life is when it slows, when it listens, when it flows inward instead of outward. A tree is not static. It is full of motion. We simply don't see it. And perhaps that is the deepest kind of wisdom. To move without rushing, to change without noise, to grow quietly. So as you rest, as your thoughts soften and spread like roots, know that even now, in the middle of this very moment, somewhere, a single drop of sap is turning. A sugar signal is traveling. A vessel is adjusting its walls to meet the needs of dawn. It does not need to hurry. It does not need to speak. It simply flows. And that is enough. High above the forest floor, where light breaks into beams through dancing branches, there lives a world of green, always listening. Leaves. So many leaves. Each one a tiny solar panel, a sun catcher, a breath maker. From a distance, they seem the same. A flutter here, a shimmer there, gently waving in the breeze. But leaves are not just for show. They are messengers. They are translators. They are the forest's voice. And tonight, we're going to eavesdrop, not with ears, but with imagination. Because these thin green blades are speaking, in scents, in signals, in invisible languages only other plants can truly hear. You see, leaves are chemical factories. With sunlight as their energy source, they take carbon dioxide from the air, water from the roots, and create something miraculous: sugar. Photosynthesis. It's one of the most elegant processes in nature. And yet, that's just the beginning. Because as they absorb sunlight, leaves also absorb information. They monitor temperature, track humidity, measure light levels, wind speed, and time of day. And then they respond. Not only by opening or closing pores, not only by curling or stretching toward the sunday, but by communicating with each other and with the rest of the forest. They do this chemically. When a tree is wounded, say, by a hungry caterpillar, its leaves send out alarm chemicals, airborne molecules, tiny wafts of warning. To us, they might smell faintly bitter, astringent, plant-like. But to nearby trees, they are a message loud and clear. I'm under attack. Prepare yourself. And the neighbors listen. Within minutes, their own leaves begin producing compounds, tannins, enzymes, or toxins to make themselves taste worse. This isn't random. It's strategic. It's precise. A chemical call and response system spread across a sea of leaves. In some species, the signal can travel across dozens of meters. A tree bitten in one corner of a forest may prompt its relatives on the other side to brace for impact. This isn't just about bugs. It happens with drought too, or heat, or disease. Leaves notice, they react, and more importantly, they tell others. It's a symphony of volatile organic compounds, molecules designed not to linger, but to drift, to inform, to act quickly. Some people call them plant pheromones. Some call it green communication. But whatever the name, it is breathtaking in its complexity. You might wonder, how does a tree know what to say? Well, it doesn't know, not like we do. It doesn't think. It doesn't choose. But over millions of years, it has evolved a system of chemical vocabulary that is fast, flexible, and effective. In this language, timing matters, dosage matters, wind matters, and, like all good communication, context matters. The same chemical can mean different things, depending on what else is happening, on what was said a moment ago, on who's listening. That's part of the wonder. It's not a rigid code. It's a living, breathing language. And just like human languages, it has dialects. Different species send different signals. A maple speaks differently than an oak. A pine's alarm doesn't sound quite like a beech's. But within species, there is clarity, understanding. Sometimes, even across species, there is enough overlap that the warning is still understood. In a forest, no tree is truly isolated. Even up here in the canopy, where the light is strong and the air moves freely, the leaves are never alone. They listen to one another, they learn, and perhaps most beautifully, they adapt. If a plant is attacked regularly, it can prime its defenses, creating a stronger, faster response the next time. It's a kind of memory, a chemical shadow of what came before, not stored in neurons, but in proteins, in hormones, in the way certain genes are turned on or off. You might say, the tree remembers through chemistry. It's as if each leaf is both a sensor and a speaker. It gathers data from the sky, then whispers it into the air. And the whisper is caught by another, and another, until the entire canopy is humming with quiet messages, a constant scroll of leafy updates, too subtle for us to hear, but not too subtle to matter. Even the angle of a leaf can be a kind of language, turning to capture light, tilting to release heat, shuddering slightly as air pressure changes before a storm. If you could speed up time, you might see the entire forest move, like a living lung, breathing in sunlight, exhaling signals. Even the color of leaves is a kind of message. When chlorophyll breaks down in autumn, it reveals other pigments, carotenoids, anthocyanins, yellows, oranges, reds. But these aren't just pretty, they have function. Red pigments, for example, can act as sunscreens, protecting sensitive leaf tissue, as nutrients are reabsorbed before the leaf is dropped. Some scientists even suggest they might serve as deterrents to insects, a kind of visual signal saying, this leaf is not worth your trouble. All of this, the scents, the pigments, the postures, it's communication. But what makes it even more beautiful is that it's not only tree to tree. Insects listen, fungi listen, bacteria respond. The forest is multilingual, and leaves are at the center of it all. They stand between earth and sky, between light and root, between silence and speech. And they do it without voice, without ego, without expectation. They speak because that is their nature, to translate light into sugar, to turn wind into warnings, to take in air and give back life. So tonight, as your breath slows, to imagine yourself as a single leaf on the outermost tip of a branch. You are small, but connected. You feel the breeze. You hear the hum of nearby leaves. You send a message, soft, invisible, carried on the wind, and in the distance, others begin to prepare. There is no fear, only awareness, only readiness, only quiet communication in a sea of green. No shouting, no noise, just chemistry, just listening, just leaf talk. Reach out, in your mind, and imagine your hand brushing gently along the surface of a tree. The texture is rough, cool. It crumbles slightly in places, flakes in others. Some bark is furrowed and deep, like wrinkles on a wise old face. Some is smooth and pale, like the quiet skin of a sleeping animal. But no matter the shape, the color, or the feel. Bark is never just decoration. It is the skin of the tree, and just like your own, it tells stories. It remembers. Let's settle in now and drift slowly into the world of bark. It wraps the tree from top to bottom, from the tip of the twigs to the deepest base at the forest floor, always exposed, always on the edge between the outer world and the inner mystery. Bark is made of layers. The outermost, the part you can see and touch, is called the outer bark, or more formally, the rhitodome. It is dead tissue, but not useless. Far from it. This dry, cracked, shedding armor is the tree's shield. It protects against frost. It resists insects. It keeps out fungi, wind, and fire. It also slows water loss, sealing in moisture like a silent, self-healing bandage. And when it's injured, it responds. Not with a scream, not with pain, but with growth. New bark begins to form beneath the wound. Cells multiply. Layers thicken. A scar takes shape. If you've ever seen a knot, a bulge, or a strange ring on a trunk, that may be the memory of a branch long gone, or of a storm long past. Bark remembers in form, not in words. It wears history like a coat, stitched together with time. But go just beneath that rough surface, and you'll find the phloem, the living layer that we mentioned earlier. This is the inner bark, where nutrients flow, where sugar travels, where communication pulses softly from leaf to root. The phloem lives just outside the cambium, a paper-thin layer of magic, where growth begins. And it is from this invisible seam that new bark is born, slowly, steadily, without ever stopping. A tree's bark is always changing, always rebuilding itself, but never too fast, because fast growth leaves gaps, weakness, openings, and trees, they are patient. They build strength with slowness. Different trees grow different bark, shaped by the lives they live. Birches peel in soft, papery sheets, a natural shedding that may help with pests. Redwoods grow bark over a foot thick, spongy, fire-resistant, almost like armor. Aspens share a smooth, pale bark that can even photosynthesize, catching light with its skin when the leaves are gone. Some barks host moss, others repel it. Some are homes for lichen, others ooze sap when wounded. Each bark, a personality, a history, a map of the tree's interaction with the world. But what's most fascinating is how bark carries memory. Not memory like we know it, not thoughts or images, but scars, patterns, decisions etched into living tissue. When a tree is injured, the bark does not just regrow. It reorganizes. It lays down layers differently around the wound, creating a kind of barrier zone, a compartment that seals off damage and keeps infection from spreading. This process is called compartmentalization, and it is one of the most remarkable ways trees survive. They don't heal the way we do. They don't erase damage. They isolate it. If a branch is lost, the tree walls off that area. If a fungus enters the bark, the tree builds chemical and physical barricades around it. It's as if the tree says, "This happened, and I will carry it, but I won't let it consume me." Over time, these responses add up. A tree may carry dozens, hundreds, even thousands of such quiet decisions, each one encoded not in neurons, but in wood, in texture, in color, in thickness. And if you were to read a tree's bark, you'd read its life. The lightning strike from 30 summers ago, the grazing deer from a spring long past, the child who carved initials, the cold snap that cracked the surface, and the long healing that followed, all remembered, all visible, If only you know how to look. But bark does more than just respond to injury. It also responds to age. As a tree matures, its bark changes, becoming thicker, more textured, more complex. In old trees, bark can become deeply furrowed, offering shelter to insects, birds, and entire miniature ecosystems. Tiny beetles, mosses, bats that sleep in folds. In this way, bark becomes not just skin, but shelter, not just a boundary, but a community. And all the while, the tree continues to grow, adding new layers from within, shedding old ones without. Imagine, if you will, the feeling of being inside such a tree, wrapped in your own armor, thick, protective, carved with time, but always alive just beneath. You feel the wind, but it cannot hurt you. You feel the sun, but it cannot dry you. You feel the cold, but you endure. And with every passing season, you change slightly, add a new wrinkle, a new ridge, a new scar, gently sealed and remembered. And you carry it all, not with pain, but with grace. That is bark. It's not flashy. It doesn't shimmer, but it is one of the most powerful creations in nature. A quiet record of resilience, a testament to protection without aggression, to memory without fear, to survival without panic. Even now, as you lie still in the calm of this moment, somewhere in the world, a young tree is forming its first true layer of bark, its first defense, its first boundary. And somewhere else, an old tree's bark is flaking gently to the ground, making space for another ring, for another story. All of this happens slowly, patiently, with dignity, and as you drift, let the thought of bark comfort you. You too have scars. You too have layers. You too carry memories in your skin. You are growing. You are protecting. You are becoming, just like the trees. And that is something worth sleeping on. Breathe in and imagine standing beside a freshly cut tree. Not for harm, but for learning. The scent of sap lingers in the air. A soft, golden sweetness. Fresh, earthy. And there, facing you, smooth and round, is a cross-section of time, a disk of memory, a quiet calendar, a record written not in ink, but in circles, tree rings. Let your eyes soften, let your mind slow, because these rings, so delicate, so consistent, carry more than just the tree's age. They carry its story. Every year, a tree grows a new layer of wood from the inside out. The process begins in spring, when the cambium, the thin layer just under the bark, awakens from winter's sleep. It begins to divide. Cell by cell, a new ring is born. This early wood, made during the lush days of spring and early summer, is pale, soft, porous. Its cells are wide, built to carry water quickly up from the roots. Then summer deepens. The pace slows. The days shorten. Growth becomes more deliberate. The late wood forms, darker, denser, stronger. Together, these two halves, early wood and late wood, form one complete annual ring. 1 year, one breath in the life of a tree. Some years, the ring is wide. Plenty of rain, warmth, light. Other years, the ring is thin, drought, frost, struggle. But regardless of thickness, each ring is honest. It does not exaggerate. It does not skip. Trees do not lie. And that is why we trust them. Scientists study these rings in a field called dendrochronology, the science of dating events and environmental changes by examining the growth rings of trees. And oh, how much they can tell. A sudden series of narrow rings? Perhaps a long drought. Unusual thickening? Maybe a stretch of warm, wet summers. A scar embedded deep inside? Perhaps a fire, a lightning strike, an insect infestation. Some rings even show signs of a solar storm, an event in the sun's history, recorded quietly in wood. Imagine that, a tree in the forest, watching the stars and writing them down in silence. Dendrochronologists have used tree rings to trace volcanic eruptions, glacial movement, the migration of civilizations, and even the rise and fall of ancient societies. Because trees do not just stand in time, they contain it. Each ring is like a vinyl groove, a spiral of memory. If only we could play it like a record, but no sound comes, only stillness. And yet, the message is there, in width, in shape, in pattern. Even trees growing side by side will tell slightly different stories, depending on shade, soil, and subtle differences in light and water. No two are identical, just like no two people are, but together they paint a bigger picture, a chorus of quiet witnesses, each one contributing a line to the poem of time. There's something sacred about that. The idea that a tree, planted before you were born, has been recording the climate year after year, without fanfare, without complaint, just growing, just remembering. The oldest tree on Earth is a bristlecone pine, over 4,800 years old. That means it was alive before the pyramids, before written language in some regions, before your ancestors had surnames. And within its trunk, layered deep in tight rings, is a record of every single year it has known. Winter, summer, storm, silence. A library with no shelves, a biography without words, and yet completely trustworthy. There's a reason we turn to trees when we need to measure the past. They don't shift, they don't forget, they simply endure. Even after a tree dies, its rings remain. Archaeologists have studied ancient wood beams, from temples and tombs, matching their ring patterns to living trees nearby. And just like that, snap, they can date events with astonishing precision, sometimes to the very year, all because a tree stood still and paid attention. But there's something even more personal about rings, because, like trees, you too carry time, not in concentric circles, but in scars, in memories, in subtle changes that only you might notice. A wrinkle at the corner of your eye, a strength gained after difficulty, a softness earned through care. You have your own rings, invisible though they may be. And tonight, as you rest, you might reflect on those quiet years of your own, the seasons that felt fruitful, the ones that felt thin. They all mattered. They all made you. Just like every ring makes the tree, and no one ring defines it. Not the widest, not the narrowest, not even the ones with damage. They are all part of the same story, and it is the accumulation that gives strength. The more rings a tree has, the more stable it becomes. The better it can weather storms, the deeper its roots can grow. So don't fear the hard years. They are part of the trunk, part of the truth. Now picture again the smooth cross-section. Let your eyes follow the rings from center to edge, from the tiny core, the pith, to the newest outer circle. A journey in wood, a spiral of becoming. And as you drift deeper into your own sleep, perhaps your breath will take on a rhythm, in, out, like the growth of the tree. Slow, patient, cyclical, year after year, without asking for attention, without needing to be seen. The tree simply grows, and records, and endures. And so do you. You grow, You carry your time inside, and somewhere, in the stillness, a ring is being written, not to be displayed, not to be judged, just to be part of you. So rest now, with the comfort that the forest knows your pace. And that time, when counted in rings, is nothing to fear. It's a gentle thing, a growing thing, a quiet, sacred spiral you carry in silence. Let's take a quiet breath together and imagine a forest at the edge of autumn. The light has softened, no longer bright and sharp, but golden, like the final hour before sunset. The air smells of damp leaves and faraway wood smoke, and the trees, once brimming with summer's green exuberance, are beginning to let go. The edges of the leaves curl. Colors deepen, burnt orange, rusty red, soft ochre and gold. It is not death. It is not decay. It is preparation. Because just like you, trees need rest. And so, each year, they begin to slow down, methodically, richly, as if they are remembering a lullaby they've known for thousands of years. This is the story of how trees fall asleep. Not suddenly, not all at once, but in stages, with grace, with patience. Let's begin. In the crown, where the leaves live. As the daylight shortens, trees begin to sense the shift, not with eyes, but through photoreceptors, cells that detect changes in light and temperature. Longer nights trigger a change in hormones. In particular, a hormone called abscisic acid begins to build within the leaves. Its purpose? To gently begin the separation process. The connection between the leaf and the twig starts to weaken. A specialized layer of cells, called the abscission layer, forms like a soft pillow between them. Nutrients are drawn back into the tree. Chlorophyll, the molecule that makes leaves green, breaks down first, revealing the oranges, reds, and yellows that were there all along. They weren't created in fall. They were uncovered. What a lovely thought. That beauty isn't added in the final moments. It's revealed. As the days grow colder, the leaves detach, one by one, a gentle release. And they don't fall in panic. They glide. They twirl. They become part of the forest floor, a quilt for the roots beneath. But the story doesn't end there, because while the canopy rests, the roots continue their quiet work. Autumn is a time of drinking deeply. The soil is still warm from summer, and rainfall is often plentiful. Trees pull in water, storing it in their cells, like filling up a pantry for the winter. They also absorb nutrients, calcium, magnesium, potassium, building reserves to last through the cold. Inside the trunk, another transformation is underway. Water in the vascular tissues begins to shift. Some of it moves into the spaces between cells, where it's less likely to freeze. Cells begin producing special proteins, cryoprotectants, that lower the freezing point of their contents. It's like the tree is adding antifreeze to its veins. Smart, simple, silent. This process is called cold hardening, and it's crucial for survival in cold climates. Trees don't hibernate the way animals do. They don't curl up or migrate, but they do enter a state called dormancy, a suspended animation, a slowness so complete it almost feels like stillness. But even in that stillness, they are listening. A dormancy period has 3 stages: pre-dormancy, true dormancy, and post-dormancy. In the first, the tree prepares. Leaves drop, metabolism slows, growth ceases. In the second, it waits, insensitive even to short, warm spells. It will not awaken too soon. In the third, it begins to stir, slowly regaining responsiveness as temperatures rise. And what's fascinating is this: trees have internal clocks that help them measure these changes. They count the chilling hours, the number of hours below a certain temperature, before they allow growth to resume. Too few chilling hours, and spring will not come, even if the sun is shining, because safety matters more than speed. Even buds, those tiny knots on winter branches, are quietly waiting. Inside, they hold entire leaves, or flowers, folded tight, protected by layers of scales and waxy coatings. Each bud is a promise, wrapped in patience. And now, imagine that forest again. It's winter now. The snow has settled into the crooks of bare branches. The wind whispers through trunks, like a breath exhaled, and all the trees are sleeping. Not dead, not dormant in despair, but resting, exactly as they're meant to. And here's the quiet miracle. During this time, a tree is not thinking about growth. It's not reaching for light. It's not competing. It is simply conserving, simply being. It knows that spring will return, and it trusts the stillness. What a lesson. In a world that asks for constant motion, constant blooming, trees remind us that slowing down is not giving up. It's preparing. Because when spring does come, and it always does, the trees awaken from their sleep. With strength, the stored water in their roots surges upward, bringing nutrients and energy. The buds swell. The canopy unfurls. The world turns green again, but only because it was brown and bare for a while. Only because the tree knew how to pause. And now, as you rest, perhaps you too feel the need to slow, to exhale, to let something fall, to trust that stillness is part of your cycle too. So many of us fear winter, fear the pause, fear the empty branches, but the tree does not. It welcomes the shift. It leans into the silence. It prepares not by resisting, but by surrendering, and in doing so, it survives. More than survives, it thrives. So let your body soften, let your breath deepen, let your thoughts settle like snow on quiet limbs. You do not have to bloom right now. You do not have to produce, to shine, to stretch. You can be like the tree in winter, still alive, still whole, just sleeping. And somewhere out there, in a forest you've never seen, 1,000 trees are doing just that, standing quietly, holding space for spring, trusting the rhythm of their world. And perhaps you can too. Good night, gentle listener. Sleep like the trees, in peace. Let's take one more breath together. A quiet, gentle inhale, and exhale, soft and slow. Now imagine standing in a dense forest. It's not the kind of place with dramatic mountain peaks or rushing waterfalls. It's simpler than that. A place of moss-covered ground, soft light filtering through high branches, the quiet hum of insects, and the rustle of leaves stirred only by wind. At first glance, it might seem that every tree here stands alone, a separate trunk, a separate life. But stay a little longer, and you'll begin to see something different. Because forests are families. You see, for a long time, we imagined trees as competitors, each one racing upward, straining for light, trying to outgrow its neighbors. But in the quiet spaces of science, and the even quieter spaces underground, a different story has emerged. One of cooperation, of connection, of care. Let's journey below the soil. Under your feet, beneath the roots, is a vast, invisible network, delicate and alive. Fungi, not mushrooms, though they are part of it, but threads, called mycelium, so fine they make spider silk look thick. These fungal threads connect the roots of trees to one another, tree to tree, species to species. Scientists call this the mycorrhizal network, but you might hear it nicknamed something else, the wood wide web. And through this web, trees talk, not with words, but with nutrients, hormones, chemical signals. A birch shares carbon with a fir. A beech tree warns its neighbors of an insect attack. A dying tree donates its remaining sugars to the saplings nearby. They give, they receive, they remember. Older trees, massive, ancient individuals, called mother trees, serve as hubs in this underground system. Their roots stretch far, and their fungal partners are many. When young trees grow in their shadow, the mother trees nurture them, providing carbon, guidance, even protection from drought or disease. It's not sentimentalism, it's ecology. But perhaps it's both. Because the more we study forests, the more we see patterns that resemble kindness. And isn't that a beautiful thing? That in the silence of a forest, there's an entire world of generosity unfolding just below the moss. Even trees of different species cooperate. One may shade the other. One may signal danger. They don't need to be alike to support each other. And that feels like something humans could learn from. But even above ground, trees show signs of relationship. In tight groves, they adjust their branches to avoid crowding, a kind of crown, shyness, where no one tree dominates the space. Each gives the other room to grow, room to breathe. It's not that they are passive. They still grow, still stretch, but not at the expense of others. And in a healthy forest, when a tree falls, whether from lightning, disease, or simply age, it becomes something new. A nurse log. Its decaying body feeds fungi, mosses, insects. It creates rich soil for new seedlings to grow. Even in death, it contributes to life. It doesn't resist the cycle. It participates in it. And perhaps most touching of all, trees remember their companions. In experiments, trees that were once connected underground, but later separated, still respond to signals from their former partners, as if the bond persists, even when distance grows. And maybe that's not so strange. Maybe, like us, trees carry memory in their own quiet way. Because to be a forest is not just to be many trees, it is to be together, to share, to support, to be part of something larger than yourself. As you rest tonight, perhaps you'll think of those networks, under the soil, the threads of trust, the gifts given freely. And maybe you'll reflect on your own roots, the people who nourish you, the ones you've supported. Because just like in the forest, our strength comes not only from growing tall, but from growing together. So let your breath be slow, let your body soften, and let the wisdom of the woods wrap around you like a blanket. You are not alone. You are part of a grove, seen or unseen, that holds you steady. And somewhere out there, in a forest dim with starlight, the trees are breathing beside you. Together, settle into your breath now. Let your eyes grow heavy, and allow your mind to drift, not away from the world, but gently deeper into it. Imagine, just for a moment, that you are lying beneath a great old tree. Its trunk rises like a cathedral pillar, rough and time-worn. Its canopy spreads overhead in quiet majesty, a green ceiling that breathes with the wind. Sunlight trickles through in golden threads. Not harsh, not demanding, just present. The world is still here, but softer. And beneath these branches, you begin to wonder, what do trees know that we so often forget? Perhaps they know that time is not something to chase, that you don't have to sprint through every hour to make it meaningful. Trees measure life in centuries, not seconds. In the widening of rings, not the ping of a clock. And yet, they are never late. They do not panic when the rains come slowly. They do not grieve when a leaf must fall. They simply adjust. They adapt. They endure. You, too, are allowed to move slowly, to pause, to grow quietly. Trees don't bloom all year. They don't try to be beautiful in every season. And yet they are no less alive when their branches are bare. Isn't that something? You don't have to be productive every moment to be worthwhile. You can rest. You can fall silent. And you are still you, still becoming. Maybe that's what trees are trying to teach us, that rest isn't something you earn. It's something you require. It's not a luxury. It's part of being alive. And in the forest, rest isn't idle. It's deep work. In winter, a tree appears still. But inside, it's protecting, preserving, preparing. Maybe your stillness is doing more than you know. There's also something to learn from how trees connect. We so often think of strength as standing alone, but forests teach otherwise. They thrive not in isolation, but in interconnection. Roots that reach toward each other, signals that pass underground, shelter offered without request. No tree is the tallest by force alone. It is lifted by the health of the forest. And you are allowed to need others. You are allowed to lean, to be held, to rest in the shade of someone else's kindness. Connection is not weakness. It's wisdom. The forest knows this. It's why old trees nourish the young. Why dying trees give their last to the next generation. A kind of legacy, woven not in words, but in wood and wind. Perhaps trees also remind us to listen more than we speak, to grow roots before we chase the Sunday, to stand still long enough, to notice the light changing through the day. There is no rush. The universe is not asking you to hurry. Tonight, as you lie beneath these imagined branches, I know this. There is time. There is room. There is peace in patience. Let the lessons of the forest settle in your bones. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to let go. You are allowed to sleep. The world will keep turning. The stars will still rise. And in the morning, when you open your eyes, perhaps you'll carry a little more of the forest with you. Its calm, its rhythm, its grace. So good night, gentle listener. Let the roots hold you steady. Let the branches shelter you. Let the stillness soften you. You are safe here. And sleep is just another season in which you quietly grow.